never had an election before that has engaged people on social networks, Twitter, Facebook, the way this one has. Liz Herron has been watching this throughout the campaign and is watching it tonight, election night, and she joins us now. Liz?
Thanks, Alan. So who is winning the campaign on Facebook tonight, and what are people saying there? Who's dominating the conversation? I'm joined by Katie Harbath of Facebook. Katie, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So Katie, everyone who has a Facebook account today was greeted by an app this morning at the top of the page, inviting them to say that they voted on Facebook. And it looks like, according to this, we have at least 8.5 million people who have done it so far today. Can you share with us a little more stats there, like who's dominating the conversation, what are people saying, anything about demographics of people who are using your I Voted app?
Sure, we've actually seen quite a few women actually clicking that button, but we've seen people all over the United States. If you go to facebookstories.com/vote, you can actually see a real-time map that lights up every time somebody clicks that button across Facebook. But we, like you said, we have seen millions of people sharing their votes today when they voted, starting early in the morning on the East Coast and still going on the West Coast. And it's equal, you're seeing it for Democrats, Republicans, from House races to presidential. So it's really exciting.
So is one presidential candidate dominating a little bit more than the other, or is it equal?
I really think it's equal. When you really look at, you don't look at fans, but when you look at engagement, and we have a number called People Talking About This on Facebook, and when you look at both Mitt Romney's and President Obama's numbers, those engagement numbers are very equal, and I think that it'll be very interesting to see. I think it'll match up very closely to what we might see tonight in terms of who ends up winning.
So Katie, I've got your app up here right now, and I'm looking, there are 5.6 million female voters versus 2.8 million male voters who have used it. Why do you think that is? What's the discrepancy there?
It's very interesting. We kind of see across Facebook, depending on demographics, sometimes females do tend to share a little bit more, and it seems to definitely be the case here today with the election and wanting to share with their friends and family that they voted.
So yeah, women are a little bit overrepresented when it comes to social networks in general. That's another thing I wanted to talk to you about, was the peer pressure effect. When we talk about people sharing, voting has become a lot more public this year than it was in 2008, for instance. Do you think that's been driving people to the polls at all? Do you think people who weren't planning on voting have been sort of shamed into it by their Facebook friends?
Absolutely. I think I would more say encouraged by their Facebook friends. But in 2010, when we did this I Voted button, we actually worked with a researcher at UC San Diego, and the study that they did was published in Nature in September, and it showed that people seeing their friends that they had voted had driven an additional over 300,000 voters to the polls. And in an election like this one, where it could be very close in states, it could really make the difference. And you saw the campaigns believing that as well. Both President Romney, or both, a little early there, both Governor Romney and President Obama's campaigns have been using Facebook apps where people can log in and share with their friends messages and share with them to encourage to get out the vote. And they're both still doing that now to make sure people stay in line and that they're voting as polls stay open on the West Coast.
Another interesting trend along the same lines was we saw a lot of people using Instagram today to share photos of their polling places and also their ballots, which turns out is actually illegal in some states. What do you make of that trend of people sort of really documenting their vote in public ways, in ways they haven't before?
One of the biggest things we've seen with this election is how important imagery has become. You look at both Obama and Romney's Facebook pages, every single post has an image attached to it, and people love sharing photos, and Instagram has become such a huge app for them to do that with. I think 250,000 pictures were shared talking about the election, and even more than that, talking about people sharing that they voted. And people like to have that imagery, taking that picture of their I Voted sticker and sharing it on Facebook. And we find that photos get 2 times the amount of engagement than others, and I think people just really like to interact with that a lot more than necessarily people just writing out a status message.